Guess who just finished watching Avatar: The Last Airbender on Netflix? And now I'm going to rank all these characters, alright? We're going to do a nice tier list. And what I am specifically ranking here is how well of an adaptation these characters were. So not just that, like, you know, the quality of the characters or anything, but how well I think they adapted them. And to start off, we have Aang. I think this is a solid A tier, okay? It's nothing, it's not special, like it's not an S tier, it's nothing like too crazy, but I didn't really have any major issues. I think there were a few times where he's kind of paying too much attention, I think, is like my one criticism, which is like probably a bit vague, but like I remember it was in episode 1 or 2, I think, where someone was doing something and he was like watching and he was like giggling or trying not to giggle or something. I'm like, Aang wouldn't do that. He'd be like more aloof than that. But other than that, like visually, he looks great. He looks just like Aang. The acting was great. Like he feels like an actual character. Yeah, it's just like very small things that like I think were the issue. But other than that, I think it's really great. So Aang was fantastic, A tier. We have Appa. I think it's like a nice C tier, you know? I think it looks, actually, no, probably B tier. I think the only issue is that we don't get much of him. He doesn't really do anything to like characterize him. But he looks good. The noises he makes sound fine. I think that's really all it is. Like there wasn't too much to him. I'll probably just move him down the C tier because we really just don't see much of him. Oh boy, now we have Azula. Azula is a very interesting case because when I saw her initially, I was like, this doesn't really look like Azula. Like I wouldn't pin her out when I'm looking at her to be like, oh, that's Azula. But I guess they kind of play on that expectation because she's like hiding or disguised as like an Earthbender spy or something like that, an Earth Kingdom spy. I don't know. But overall, after seeing her, you know, quite a lot, there were quite a few scenes where I thought she looked like identical to Azula. I think everything about the way it was produced, like directed and lighting and her like hair and everything, I think it looked really good and looked just like her. Character-wise, they decided to do a very different thing, which is, you know, have a character arc for her starting right from the beginning. So it does feel like the late kind of Azula that you get at the end of book 3, where, you know, when she's mentally cracking and she's distancing herself from like May and Ty Lee and all that. I don't know, it absolutely does not feel like the early Azula at all. Like, yeah, I don't know. I'm going to put it in BT because it's a mix. Because it's like, it feels like late Azula. It doesn't really feel like the early Azula, but it certainly looks like, in some scenes, it really looks like Azula. And really, it kind of feels like Azula as well. So, I don't know. BT, it's like a mix. We have Boomy. Boomy is one of the worst ones, I think. Visually, I think it looks fine. I kind of wish he was more muscular when he takes the shirt off, because that's kind of meant to be like the big, you know, the big reveal, which is, oh my god, this old man is actually really buff and everything. But I think it was okay. It wasn't terrible, like visually when you look at it. I think his voice and his personality and everything felt very Boomy-like. I think they did that very well. I think the other thing, I guess, is the bending, like his bending and everything. It felt quite strong. Like initially when he first started doing it, I was like, oh, this is a bit weak. You know, Boomy's meant to be like some of the best in the entire world, but as the fight went on, you know, it was doing more crazy things, and I'm like, okay, this feels more like Boomy level of fighting here. But the massive issue, I guess, with Boomy, which I'm sure everyone who talks about the show would talk about this, is that he's not joyful at all. Like he was truly scorned by Aang leaving him or whatever, and abandoning the world and everything. It felt like he was much tougher on Aang, whereas in the actual show, it felt like in the animated original, he felt more like he was playing a game with his old friend, you know, and trying to teach him a lesson. But in this, it felt more like vindictive, and like he was like kind of hurt by Aang, which, I don't know, to me that didn't really feel like Boomy, so that goes in C tier, probably above Upper. But we have Gran, who I don't remember at all from the, like, I know the name, of course, and I know she's like a big deal when it comes to the end of book 1, you know, with Paku or whatever. But I don't remember what she was like at all. I just remember her like being really quiet and like sitting in a corner. So this was kind of good, but the acting, I think, wasn't very compelling. The speech she gave wasn't particularly, it didn't strike a nerve in me or anything in a positive way. I'm also going to put her in C tier. Yeah. Then we have Gyatso, or Monk Gyatso, I think. I think he was really good. Again, this is another character where we get quite a lot more of them here. I guess similar to Azula early on, but this guy, he just like, we see him in like one episode earlier on, and then we see him one episode later in like book 3 or something in the Roku flashbacks. But I thought it was really great. He felt very, felt like a mentor figure to Aang. He kind of felt like a friend to him as well. I guess I felt more the mentor than I did the friend. Some of the like trying to talk about how, oh yeah, treat me as a friend, or like view me as a friend, I think that got brought up a few times. I didn't really feel it that strongly as I did in the original, but I think it was good enough. Like it was a solid adaptation. Oh boy. So I haven't looked up what anyone thought about this. So I could be like, you know, being crucified right now for this, but this is Iroh, okay? Iroh I thought was the worst adaptation. To me, it didn't feel like Iroh at all. Because to me, Iroh was a very, obviously everyone loves Iroh, right? In the original, Iroh is a very subtle character. He's a very conflicted character. He's a very complex character, you could say. In this, there's a few things that I don't like about the adaptation. Firstly, it feels like everything that Iroh was saying kind of felt like he's putting on an act or something. Like, it kind of feels like the way he's expressing things to Zuko doesn't feel genuine to me. It kind of feels like he was, he's got like a formal face to him, or like a formal kind of way to say things. And it's like, it's not as, it's just so hard to describe it. It's not as, kind of loose, and like, he's not really connecting as well with Zuko is kind of what I felt. But that's the first thing. I also don't really feel, there's two things. I don't feel the power from him, because there's a lot of hints throughout like book one where, well, not a lot, I guess, there's a few. Like for instance, when Zuko and Zhao are having their Agni Kai, and then right at the end when Zhao is about to like attack Zuko again, and Iroh steps in and like pushes him back. It's like a subtle hint that he's like surprisingly really strong. Then you, even when say Aang and Roku were like in the spirit world flying on the dragon, well, not in the spirit world, but like they're spirits and they're flying on the dragon, and Iroh sees him in the sky or whatever in the original. It's like it hints that there's like more to this guy, and there's a lot of depth, and he's actually really powerful and well studied and all that. I didn't really get any of that in this at all. The only things you really get is that you get the mention of the Dragon of the West, which is kind of awesome, you know, as always. And at the Omashu bit, he like does like a double flame thing, and it's like really strong, or more strong than any other firebending we've seen outside of like Sozin or anything. That's beyond that, we don't really get any, like, he doesn't really feel like a particularly strong character or anything. Like I said before, he doesn't feel like he has that connection with Zuko. He doesn't, like, for instance, this Iroh, he also has conversations with Aang, for instance, and he doesn't feel like he just doesn't feel kind. The original Iroh is such a, he's so distinct. Like, he is such a unique and great character that, I don't know, it felt like it didn't quite land on here, but I don't know. I couldn't really express that, but that is what it is. Jet, I thought, was a good adaptation. Is there really much to him? I guess it was quite straightforward to adapt. Like, you've got guy who hates Fire Nation doing bad for the sake of good or whatever. It was okay, you know? He kind of looked like Jet. The fighting was really good. It felt like Jet. That's really all I can say, I guess. I thought June was perfect, though. Like, she looks great. She sounds great. They had the whole... well, I don't know if I would put this on her character or Iroh, I guess, but they kind of did the Iroh having a crush on her, but instead it was the other way around. I thought that was, as an adaptation choice, I think it works well. Like, it feels like the same character, even though you change that detail about that kind of interaction. Yeah, I don't know. She was great. Then we have Katara. As an adaptation, I think visually, she might be the one that looks the closest to me. Oh, beyond, actually, there are a few here which we'll get to, but I think the Katara looks visually exactly like Katara. Which is a big plus for like an adaptation here. Now that I think about it, there's like a lot that was left out. Like, she doesn't feel, like her struggle with learning bending, it didn't feel very well adapted. It kind of felt like she just naturally kept getting better at it without having like a big struggle on like, on even the basics, for instance. I don't know. Like, she didn't have that conflict with Aang being like better at bending than her. She didn't learn anything in at the end of the season when she's at the Northern Water Tribe. Like, there wasn't much there for her. She had the whole like the sexist Northern Tribe, like that kind of storyline where she wants to, like, you know, women can be warriors too, or stuff like that. That was adapted. She doesn't, I don't know, it just kind of feels like she didn't really she didn't have any moments with any of the other, like with Aang or Sokka or like really any other character, even Zuko maybe. She didn't really have anything that stood out where I'm like, oh, that really felt like a Katara scene where she was like, you know, being genuine and kind and all that. I don't know, it never really felt like she got a moment like that. But visually, she looked really great. Then we have Ko. Ko, I think, don't get me wrong, I like the character of Ko. However, as an adaptation, I don't know, there was a lot changed. There was a lot changed about Ko. I guess firstly, visually, he looked really great. I think that's a perfect adaptation, the way he looked. The way he sounded, I thought, was also really good. I don't know if they got the same voice back, but he sounded really great. The big thing is that they changed the character where it's like he cares about his mum or something, which I think that's a really, really cool change, but like, I didn't get anything like that from the original. Now maybe this is like some lore about Ko or whatever, the face stealer. Maybe that is a thing that exists. I don't remember it from the original, but that kind of felt different, like as an adaptation thing. But I guess just because it's different, it doesn't mean it's a bad adaptation choice. I think it worked well. I think the biggest issue with him is that it didn't really feel like we got a resolution. Like we got everything about him as a character was kind of given to us via exposition from Gyatso, right? Or was it Roku? I think maybe it was Roku. I don't remember who it was, but someone gave exposition about him, and that's basically all the character we get. Because at the end, when they give back the totem or whatever from his about his family, he never really. I don't think he says anything after that. So it's like we don't really get a resolution to him. So it kind of felt weird like that. Like he didn't really feel like a complete character there. So I don't know. I'd probably put him in B tier though, because I think it was still pretty good. Then we have Kyoshi. I think she was done very well character-wise. Like she felt like the strong-headed, strong-willed, win at any cost kind of save the world character. I think her powers look great. I think the only thing is that visually, I think she didn't feel too special, I guess. Like she didn't feel like an avatar in a way if her eyes weren't glowing. Like for instance, if you were to swap her out here, take the glowing eyes away, swap her with any of the other like Kyoshi warriors, I feel like I would have the exact same visual appearance of the character. She didn't feel particularly like I know the thing about her is that she's imposing, like physically. She's very tall. She looks really big. But from this, I think the only thing I remember is like a low angle shot you get of her, which makes her look a bit taller. But I don't know. She didn't really feel special visually. But other than that, I think they nailed her character very well. So I'll put her in A tier for that. Then we have Mei, even though I think it's spelled Mai. She was fine. She's probably in line with Azula, where we didn't really get much of her. So I don't really want to put her too high, but what we did get is like her voice. She kind of sounded like Mei. Visually, I'd say visually she doesn't really look like Mei. Beyond the actual like appearance, like the, what do you call it, the hair and the makeup and all that. Like if you were to show me this and be like, which character is this? I don't know if I would pick out it's Mei. But she felt like Mei, like when I watched her, I guess, is what I'd say. So I put it in B tier, but we didn't really get much of her. Then we have Momo. I think this was oh god. This is probably similar to Upper, where we hardly got anything of him. However, it's probably a little bit more than Upper, because we didn't get the one character thing of him, like, sacrificing himself in a suicide dive to save some child from a falling debris. And then he died. He literally like, went unconscious, and it was crazy. It was the wildest moment. But anyway, I'm not here to talk about the actual content, all right? But that kind of felt like a Momo thing, where I'm like, oh yeah, Momo would do that. He'd, like, dive to save someone. So I'd probably put him in B tier, but you know what? We really did not get enough of him, so I'm just going to put him in C tier, you know? And we didn't get the one joke where it's like, that lemur, he's airbending. But anyway. Then we have Ozai. Ozai is potentially the best adapted thing. He sounded like Ozai. He felt like Ozai. Any of the additional character elements we got to him, because obviously Ozai is quite a... there isn't too much to him. We don't see too much of him in the actual original show. Everything they put here kind of felt like the Ozai, like all the additional like family details and like pushing Azula and Zuko to like compete with each other and all that. That kind of felt very Ozai to me. So I think it's a really good adaptation direction to take it, where it's like the things you add kind of feel like extensions of the character, and to me it certainly felt like that. But yeah, visually, voice, character, everything felt great about Ozai. I think Ozai is fantastic. Even the I don't know if I mentioned fighting, but the fighting was also good. The Agni Kai stuff, that was fantastic. He was great in that. Oh, then we have Roku. Okay, Roku was worse than Iroh. Roku did not feel like Roku at all. Visually, he looks a little bit like him, right? Like he's got the hair and I think his beard is probably, or I think it's not even the beard. I think the beard looks fine. I think it's the hair is like too puffy or something. It looks weird. But it was not Roku. It was like he was too jokey. He was at times he was too serious. He felt like he had a relationship with Aang, even though he didn't. It just felt so weird. Like in the original show, you know, Roku feels like a wise mentor, who's very pleasant and nice, you know? Like I think the first thing he says to Aang is like, "Oh, it's good to see you, Aang," or something like that. It's like, it's a nice thing. But he's not like a comedy character. He's not like a friend to Aang. He's like a kind of guiding mentor, you know, who understands him and his struggles and all that. So this did not feel like Iroh didn't feel good either, but this did not feel like Roku. Then we have Sokka. Sokka is probably he's definitely up there with Aang, is like really well adapted, visually great. Again, the voice sounded just like Sokka. I thought that was really great. Character-wise, he felt like he's obviously, you know, Sokka has a lot of humor and stuff. I think the humor it was adapted very well. It kind of felt like Sokka kind of humor. What else is there to Sokka? He didn't do much fighting, but I guess original Sokka didn't do much either. I think it was done really well. Sokka was great. Despite, I think everyone was fearing that Sokka was going to be butchered because of the sexism storyline, but cutting that whole thing out didn't really feel like a big loss or anything. It kind of still felt like Sokka to me, so he's an A tier. But then again, it's not an S because, I don't know, there just wasn't too much of a, I guess there just wasn't too much to him. Just like Katara, how they just didn't feel like they didn't get too many special scenes. The one scene where it felt like, okay, that's really Sokka, and he's getting a lot here and feels like Sokka is his stuff with Suki. So I guess that is why I would bump him up above Katara. But yeah, anyway. Then we have Sozin. We got a very limited screen time of him here, but I think he was fantastic. He would be like near the top of A tier, but like he looked great, sounded great, my two things I always say for all these characters. And it's kind of like a magical feeling where it's like, I think he was one of the first characters we saw, maybe even the first, like after those, the initial opening scene with the Earthbender. And I was like, oh my God, that's that guy from that flashback episode in book 3. That's so cool. So it really just felt like him. So I'll put him in S now that I think about it. I think it was really great. Look at these 3, all in S with their top knot things. Cool. Then we have Suki. Suki was also fantastic. Oh, as a character, she would be an S tier, like in the show. As an adaptation, probably A tier. She felt like she looked great, sounded great, fighting was great, connection with Sokka was great. Her issue with her like mother figure, I don't know if it actually was her mom. I think she referred to as mom at some point, but that was great. The only reason I guess I wouldn't put her in S tier is that she kind of felt too serious or too she felt like I guess her big thing in these episodes were how isolated she felt, and she hadn't seen another guy besides Sokka in a long time, obviously, and their whole village is like very isolated, and they don't get to experience the outside world. Like that felt like it was a small element in my opinion in the original show. It felt like that was her entire character in this, and she didn't feel she felt kind of like in the way she was interacting with Sokka initially felt like she saw him as like an alien, kind of like she was being very she was acting kind of weird, I guess, and I liked it. I think as a character it's really good, but when I think of the Suki from the original show, I don't remember anything like that. She kind of felt like she had an instant kind of likability to her, and she kind of felt like she immediately felt like she had a strong connection, to the other people, whereas she kind of feels a bit more distant in the show is what I would say. But yes, that's A. But if we're just ranking the character, I thought she was fantastic as a character in this. Then we have Ty Lee. Again, it's very similar to May and just May, I guess. We got a lot of Azula. We didn't get much of her, but let me say, I might just put her in S tier just because when she spoke and like the way she looked and everything, I was like, oh my God, this is a magical moment. Like this is Ty Lee. I couldn't believe it. I think we got like 2 scenes of her, but she again looked great, sounded great. The things she was saying, there were Ty Lee lines. I was amazed. I was like, oh my God, this is Ty Lee. So she gets S tier for that. Oh boy, now we have Yue. Yue, this felt like a very it felt like a very different character, but it also felt like a bit more of a fleshed out character. But the way she was fleshed out didn't really feel very Yue like. So oh boy, how do I even explain this? When I think of Yue in the original, I think of a kind person who feels like they have a duty that they have to perform, and they feel kind of trapped in that. Like they have to marry this person they don't want to marry. They have to be like a leader when they might not want to be. I don't know. That's kind of what I feel like from Yue. Now, maybe I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've seen, the actual book 1 ending, but that's the impression I got of her. In this, like they take away the marriage thing. They kind of don't make her feel like she's too... I guess they do it. They explicitly say that, like, she has a line where she's talking about, oh, I don't want this responsibility and I'd rather, be back here making the ice cream or whatever. Like they're explicitly saying the character thing I was saying before, but I didn't really feel it. Like we never see her in like a formal, like we only get one scene of her where she's like putting on appearances. And even in that scene, like putting on formal appearances. And even in that scene, she's kind of smirking and joking and not joking, but like smirking and stuff. And it's kind of like she's not even taking her like role seriously, I guess. So it kind of felt like she was like, we didn't see her struggle with the responsibility because we never really saw the responsibility, I don't know. That's kind of what I took from it. And if we're just talking about adaptations as well, they made her a waterbender, which I think was actually a good adaptation. Like, I think it, like if you were to tell me that Yue from the original show was a waterbender, we just never saw her waterbend, I'd believe it. So I would say in that regard, like it's a harmless, like if anything, just like mildly positive, like adaptation choice. So it doesn't really, like I wouldn't bump her down for that, but I probably wouldn't bump her up for that either. But I thought it was it was fine. I guess visually she is the one that looks the weirdest. Like the hair just looks really bad. Like it looks, I don't know if it's the style or the way it like blends with her head or something. It just looks like a really bad wig. Costume looked great. I think visually she looks okay if the hair had just blended better. But yeah, for that, yeah, and all that, C tier. Then we have Zhao. Zhao, I think, was really good. He'd be like top of A tier as well. I don't really know what to say. We got far less of him in this. than we did in the. Actually, it's not even true. I was gonna say we got less of him in this than we did the original, but like compared to all these other characters, the amount we got of them, we really like Zhao would be up there. He'd probably be like the 4th highest character in terms of like scene count or something, maybe. But yeah, it was great. You know, visually, as soon as I saw him, I'm like, oh my god, that's Zhao. It looks just like him. The voice was decent. I guess when I think of Zhao, one thing I think that might be missing is a little bit of the comedy, which you did get. You got a glimpse of it in the Blue Spirit episode where he's telling the guy not to write something down, or like when Aang is like shooting fire or air at him or whatever. Like he's like loses composure. Like we got a little bit of the humor there, so I'll give him that. So why wouldn't he be S tier? What didn't I like about Zhao? I guess maybe the exclusion of the Zhong, is that his name? That storyline where it's like he kind of adds a little bit of depth to him. I don't know, but he's not really quite S for me. I think I'd put it in A tier. Oh, then we have Zuko, probably maybe the best adapted character in this. Again, looks great, sounds great. He's passionate enough in the things he's saying. You know, he gets angry. He's hot-headed. You know, this is early on in his journey. I think I liked his aspect of relationship with Iroh better than I liked Iroh's aspect of the relationship. Like, I kind of liked when Zuko was talking to Iroh. It kind of felt like, oh, Zuko was talking to Iroh. But whenever Iroh would talk to Zuko, I was like, this doesn't really feel like Iroh was talking to him. So I don't know. I like that aspect of it. I think it was really great there. I think in the flashbacks, he really felt like the young Zuko that we see in like flashbacks in the original. I thought that was really good. His like hesitation to fight Ozai and the Agni Kai. I just think every element of Zuko, I think, was handled really well. Even his fighting, like I think it really captured that. Like I don't know what you call it, but like he's like spinning and like kicking and like even the fighting was really well done for Zuko. But yeah. So anyway, that's the tier list. I hope you enjoyed.